Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his cargo ship toward the docking bay. Station Kepler 7 looked busy today, maybe too busy. Ships of all shapes and sizes filled the space around the trading station. Human vessels mixed with alien craft, creating a colorful display against the black of space. His ship, the Lucky Strike, was nothing special. Just a small freight hauler that had seen better days. The hull showed scratches from countless trips, and the engine made strange noises that worried him. But it was his ship, and it had kept him alive for 10 years of cargo runs between the outer colonies. Marcus had been a medic once, back when he was young and full of hope. Now he just moved cargo from one station to another. It was honest work, and it paid enough to keep him flying. Most days, that was enough. The docking controller's voice crackled through his radio. Lucky Strike, you're cleared for Bay 47. Warning, we have a Zephyrian diplomatic vessel in port. Stick to designated areas only. Marcus frowned. Zephyrians rarely came to frontier stations like this one. They preferred their own space, their own people. Something big must be happening for them to show up here. He brought his ship in smooth and easy, despite the engine's protests. The docking clamps grabbed hold with a solid thunk. Marcus ran through his shutdown checklist and grabbed his toolkit. The station's repair bay had promised to fix his navigation computer today. Without it, he'd be flying blind on his next run. The airlock opened with a hiss, and Marcus stepped onto the station. The main corridor buzzed with activity, but something felt different. People moved faster than usual. They kept looking over their shoulders. Conversations happened in whispers. A human security guard walked past, his hand resting on his weapon. Marcus caught his arm. What's going on? Everyone seems nervous. The guard glanced around before answering. Big Zephyrian ship arrived an hour ago. Royal markings. The kind of ship that could blow this station apart without trying. Commands telling everyone to stay calm, but he shrugged and moved on. Marcus made his way toward the repair shops, but the crowd slowed him down. More security guards appeared, creating a path through the center of the corridor. People pressed against the walls, some looking curious, others scared. Then he heard it. A sound like crystal bells ringing in harmony. Zephyrian voices. Marcus had heard them before, but rarely this close. The sound grew stronger as a group of figures approached. First came the royal guards. Each one stood 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in what looked like living armor. The armor shifted colors as they moved, from deep blue to silver to gold. Their faces remained hidden behind helmets that resembled insect heads. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Behind the guards walked other Zephyrians. They wore flowing robes that seemed to float rather than hang. Their skin had a metallic shine, like polished chrome. 4 arms moved with graceful precision as they gestured to each other. And then Marcus saw her. She was taller than the others, maybe 9 feet. Her skin wasn't chrome but crystal, catching the station's lights and throwing them back in rainbow patterns. 4 arms ended in hands that had too many fingers. Her head was larger than a human's, with big compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. She wore a crown made of what looked like living metal. It moved and shifted, forming different patterns as she walked. This had to be someone very important. Maybe even royalty. The crowd fell silent as the group passed. Everyone knew better than to get in the way of Zephyrian nobility. Marcus pressed himself against the wall like everyone else. But something strange happened. The tall Zephyrian stopped walking. Her large eyes turned toward the crowd, scanning faces. The guards stopped too, their hands moving to their weapons. Marcus felt those eyes pass over him. For a moment, he thought she would keep walking. Then her gaze snapped back to him. Those compound eyes focused on his face with an intensity that made him want to run. She stared at him. He stared back, unable to look away. The corridor grew so quiet he could hear the station's air recyclers humming. The Zephyrian took a step toward him. Then another. The crowd parted even more, giving her room. Her guards looked confused but followed her movement. She stopped just a few feet from Marcus. Up close, he could see that her crystal skin wasn't solid. Light moved through it like water, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Her breathing made a soft musical sound. "You," she said. Her voice was like nothing Marcus had ever heard. It didn't come from her mouth alone, but seemed to fill the air around them. "I know your face." Marcus opened his mouth, but found no words. What could he say to alien royalty? What did she want with a cargo hauler? She tilted her head, studying him. "The scar on your chin. The shape of your nose. The way you stand with your left shoulder higher than your right." She paused. "Do you remember me, human?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. Remember her? He would have remembered meeting a Zephyrian queen. Wouldn't he? But something stirred in the back of his mind. A memory trying to surface. A place of acid rain and toxic air. A dying alien child. Could it be? Marcus started, then stopped. The memory was there, but unclear, like looking through dirty glass. The Zephyrian moved closer. Her guards tensed, but she gestured for them to stay back. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more musical. 15 years ago. A planet called Zarian Prime. Ion storms and poison rain. She raised one of her 4 arms, showing him a scar that ran across her palm. "You held my hand and told me I would live. Do you remember now?" The memory crashed into Marcus like a wave. The crashed ships. The dying alien girl. 3 days of hell, trying to keep her alive with supplies he didn't have and knowledge he didn't possess. "Silwyn," he whispered. The Zephyrian's eyes seemed to brighten. "Yes, I am Silwyn. But I am also Queen Veltara now. And you, Marcus Chung, saved my daughter's life." The corridor erupted in surprised voices. A human cargo hauler had saved alien royalty? People started talking all at once, trying to understand what they were seeing. But Marcus barely heard them. He stared at the alien queen who claimed to remember him from a nightmare he'd tried to forget. Questions flooded his mind. How was this possible? What did this mean? And why did she look so worried? 15 years earlier, Marcus had been a different person. Young, hopeful, and serving as a medical technician aboard the cargo vessel, Harmony's Hope. It was supposed to be a routine supply run to the outer colonies. Nothing dangerous. Nothing that would change his life forever. The ion storm hit them near Zarian Prime without warning. The ship's sensors went crazy. Alarms screamed, and the lights flickered. Marcus grabbed onto whatever he could find as the ship shook like a toy in a giant's hand. "Captain," Rodriguez's voice came over the speakers, fighting through the static. "All hands, prepare for emergency landing. This is not a drill. Hull breach in sectors 4 and 7. We're going down." The crash felt like the end of the world. Metal screamed as it tore apart. The deck tilted at crazy angles. Marcus hit his head on something hard and tasted blood. Then everything went dark dot when he woke up. His head pounded and his left arm felt wrong. The ship's emergency lights cast red shadows everywhere. Smoke filled the air, making him cough. He could hear groaning from somewhere nearby. "Hello?" Marcus called out. His voice sounded strange in the damaged ship. "Anyone else alive?" 3 other crew members had survived the crash. Chief Engineer Sarah Park had a broken leg. Communications Officer Tom Wright was bleeding from his scalp but could walk. Cook Maria Santos seemed okay, except for bruises and cuts. They gathered in what used to be the mess hall. Outside the cracked windows, Marcus could see a nightmare world. Purple skies filled with storm clouds. rain that glowed green as it fell. The air itself looked toxic. "Atmosphere's poison," Sarah said, checking a handheld scanner. "Sulfuric compounds, heavy metals, radiation. The emergency suits might protect us for a few hours, but that's all." Tom tried the radio but got only static. "Communications are dead. Even if rescue ships are looking for us, they can't land in this storm." They inventory their supplies. Food for maybe a week. Water for 3 days if they were careful. Medical supplies that Marcus knew by heart from his training. And 4 emergency suits that might keep them alive long enough to matter. On the second day, the storm started to clear. That's when they saw the other crash site. "Look at that," Maria said, pointing through the window. About a mile away, smoke rose from another wreckage. The shape was all wrong for a human ship. Long and curved like a sword, with hull material that seemed to change colors. "Alien vessel," Sarah said quietly. "Zephyrian, maybe. Their ships have that biometal look." Tom checked his suit's air supply. "We should check it out. Maybe their radio works. Maybe they have supplies we can use." The walk to the alien ship was like walking through hell. The acid rain had stopped, but it left behind a landscape that looked melted. Plants that might have been trees stood twisted into impossible shapes. The ground squished under their feet, leaving footprints that glowed briefly before fading. The alien ship had taken more damage than theirs. The hull was split open in several places. Pieces of what might have been equipment lay scattered around the crash site. And there were bodies. Marcus had never seen a dead Zephyrin before. They looked like humans crossed with insects, but beautiful in a way that was hard to explain. Their skin had a metallic shine, and their forearms were folded across their chests like they were sleeping. "Poor bastards," Tom said softly. "Whatever they were doing out here, they didn't deserve this." They searched the ship for anything useful. The alien technology was beyond their understanding, but some things were universal. Power cells, water containers, what might have been medical supplies. That's when Marcus heard it. A sound like wind chimes, but weaker, sadder. "Did you hear that?" He asked the others. They stopped moving and listened. There it was again. Coming from deeper in the ship. Marcus followed the sound through twisted corridors. The others stayed close behind him, their flashlights creating dancing shadows on the alien walls. In what might have been a storage room. They found her. She was small, maybe the size of a human teenager. Her forearms were thin and fragile looking. Her skin had lost most of its metallic shine and looked dull gray. Green blood leaked from cuts on her face and arms. Her compound eyes opened when their lights hit her. She made that wind chime sound again, weaker now. "She's alive," Marcus said, dropping to his knees beside her. "She's hurt bad, but she's alive." The others gathered around. Sarah shook her head. "Marcus, we don't know anything about their biology. We can't help her." "We have to try," Marcus said, already opening his medical kit. "She's just a kid." Tom grabbed his arm. "Listen to reason. We barely have enough supplies for ourselves. We don't even know if our medicine will help or hurt her." Marcus looked down at the dying alien girl. Her eyes met his, and he saw something he recognized. Fear. Pain. The same look he'd seen in human patients who knew they were dying. "I'm not leaving her," he said. The others argued, but Marcus ignored them. He started with the basics. Stop the bleeding. Check for broken bones. Try to understand what was wrong. Her pulse was fast but steady. Her breathing seemed shallow. The green blood was concerning, but it clotted like human blood when he applied pressure. He used human bandages on her cuts. He gave her water from their precious supply, a few drops at a time. When she shivered, he covered her with his own emergency blanket. For 3 days, Marcus barely left her side. The others helped when they could, but they thought he was wasting time and supplies. They were probably right, but Marcus couldn't give up. He talked to her while he worked. He didn't know if she understood human speech, but talking seemed to calm her. He told her about Earth, about his family, about why he'd become a medic. My grandmother always said every life matters, he told her on the second night. Doesn't matter if you're human or alien or something else entirely. If someone needs help, you help them. The alien girl's hand found his. Her fingers were longer than human fingers, with too many joints. But her grip was gentle, trusting. On the third day, she spoke. Not the wind chime sound, but actual words in broken English. You, save. She said. Her voice was like music played on broken instruments. I'm trying, Marcus said. What's your name? Silwyn, she replied. I am. Daughter of. She said something in her own language that Marcus couldn't understand. But the way she said it sounded important. That night, the rescue ships came. Human ships first, scanning the area with searchlights. Marcus was unconscious by then, collapsed from exhaustion and exposure. He'd given the alien girl most of his water and used his suit's air supply to create a better atmosphere around her. When the rescue team found them, they couldn't understand what they were seeing. A human medic, barely alive, protecting an alien child with his own body. The alien was weak but stable, her injuries treated with human medical supplies that shouldn't have worked on her biology. Later, Marcus learned that Zephyrian ships had also responded to the distress calls. They found their people's ship and the survivors. But the human rescue team had already taken Marcus back to their ships for treatment. He spent 2 weeks in the hospital, recovering from acid burns and poisoning. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive. When he asked about the alien girl, they told him she'd been returned to her people. Did she make it? Marcus asked. The doctor nodded. Last we heard, yes. You did good work out there, son. Improvised medicine at its finest. But they never told Marcus who she really was. They never told him that the little girl he'd saved was Princess Silwyn, daughter of Queen Veltara, heir to one of the most powerful alien empires in known space. Marcus went back to his duties and eventually left the medical service for cargo hauling. The incident was classified, filed away in some government database. He tried not to think about those 3 days on Zarian Prime. Until now. Until a Zephyrian queen looked at him with familiar compound eyes and called him by name. The corridor on Station Kepler 7 stayed silent for long moments. Everyone stared at Marcus and the alien queen. Some people had started recording with their personal devices, but the royal guards noticed and gestured for them to stop. Queen Veltara moved closer to Marcus. Her crystal skin caught the station's lights and threw them back in patterns that made him dizzy. When she was close enough to touch, she stopped and studied his face. You remember now, she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded slowly. You were dying. Green blood everywhere. You were so small, so scared. He looked up at her towering form. How are you here? How are you her mother? The queen's compound eyes shifted, creating new patterns of light. I am not Silwyn. I am her mother, Queen Veltara. My daughter lived because of your kindness. She returned home and told me about the human who saved her life. One of the royal guards stepped forward and spoke in the Zephyrian language. It sounded urgent. The queen replied in the same musical tongue, then turned back to Marcus. My guard reminds me that we are exposed here. Too many watching eyes. She gestured to the crowd that had gathered. Would you come with me to speak privately? I have much to tell you. Marcus looked around at the faces staring at them. Some looked curious, others worried. He spotted a few people who looked like reporters or government officials. This was getting too much attention. Okay, he said, but I want to know everything. The queen nodded. Her guards formed a protective circle around Marcus as they moved through the station. People pressed against the walls to let them pass. Marcus felt like he was in a dream. They entered a section of the station he'd never seen before. The corridors here were wider, with better lighting. A sign on the wall read, "Diplomatic Quarters." The guards led them to a large room with a conference table and soft chairs. When the door closed behind them, Queen Veltara seemed to relax. Her posture became less formal. She gestured for Marcus to sit, then took a chair across from him. 2 guards remained by the door. "First, I must thank you properly," the Queen said. "What you did on Zarian Prime saved more than my daughter's life. You saved the future of our empire." Marcus shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do. She was hurt and needed help." "No," the Queen said firmly. "Most beings would not have done what you did. Even my own people might have hesitated to help an unknown alien species." She leaned forward. "Do you understand what Silwyn means to our empire? She's your daughter. She is my heir, my only child. When she dies, our royal line dies with her." The Queen's voice carried weight. "More than that, she has become our greatest military strategist and diplomat. The empire is stronger because she lived." Marcus tried to process this. "I saved an alien princess? You saved a princess who became a queen. Silwyn took my place 3 years ago when I stepped down. She now rules the Zephyrian Empire." The Queen paused. "And she has never forgotten the human who taught her our compassion." One of the guards brought a device to the table. It projected a holographic image above the surface. Marcus saw a Zephyrian who looked familiar but different. Taller, more regal, but with the same gentle eyes he remembered. "This is Silwyn now," Queen Veltara said. "She often speaks of you. She says you taught her that strength comes not from power, but from the willingness to help others." The image showed Queen Silwyn addressing what looked like a massive crowd. Other aliens stood beside her. Marcus recognized a few species he'd seen around human space. "She has changed our empire's policies based on what she learned from you," Veltara continued. "We no longer conquer other species. We invite them to join us as equals. We share technology and knowledge instead of hoarding it." Marcus felt overwhelmed. "She did all that because I gave her some bandages and water? You did more than that." The Queen touched the control, and the image changed. Now it showed Marcus on Zarian Prime, unconscious and covering the young alien with his own body. "You were willing to die for someone you had never met. Someone from a species you knew nothing about. This is not common in the galaxy." The image faded. Queen Veltara folded her 4 hands on the table. "For 15 years, we have watched humanity. Not as enemies, but as potential friends. Your species fascinates us. You solve problems in ways we never consider. You show kindness to strangers. You adapt to impossible situations." "What do you mean? You've been watching us?" "Trade ships, diplomatic missions, cultural exchanges. All approved by your government, of course. We wanted to understand the species that could produce someone like you." Marcus thought about all the alien contacts he'd heard about over the years. The gradual increase in trade and cooperation. He'd never realized it might be connected to his actions on that poison world. "But now we need more than understanding," the Queen said. Her voice became serious. "We need help." "Help with what?" Queen Veltara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her words sent ice through Marcus's veins. "My brother, Prince Kethter, has seized control of most of our empire. He believes aliens should be slaves, not equals. He particularly hates humans, whom he sees as weak and unworthy." She looked directly at Marcus. "He has ordered the death of every human in Zephyrian space." The room seemed to spin. Marcus gripped the edge of the table. "How many humans are we talking about?" "Thousands. Traders, diplomats, researchers, families who have made homes in our territory." The Queen's voice carried pain. Silwyn is fighting him, but she controls only a small part of our military. She needs allies. What does this have to do with me? Everything. The Queen stood and began pacing. Silwyn believes that humans are the key to defeating Kethter, not through superior weapons or technology, but through your unique way of thinking. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want humans to fight an alien civil war? We'd be crushed in minutes. Not fight. Think. The Queen stopped pacing and faced him. Silwyn has told me how you saved her life. You had no knowledge of our biology, but you found a way. You had limited supplies, but you made them work. You faced impossible odds, but you succeeded. The Queen activated her device again. This time, it showed a star map with colored regions. Most of it was red, with small patches of blue. Red shows Kethter's territory. Blue shows areas still loyal to Silwyn. As you can see, we are vastly outnumbered. She pointed to the human space on the edge of the map. But if humans joined us, brought your problem-solving abilities, your different perspective, you think we could make a difference? I think you already have. The Queen touched another control. The image changed to show news reports from across the galaxy. Alien species rising up against Assyrian occupation. Trade networks organizing resistance movements. Independent worlds declaring neutrality instead of surrender. Word of Kethter's coup is spreading. Many species remember the old ways, when we conquered and enslaved. They fear a return to those times. But they also remember the new alliance policies that Silwyn created. The ones inspired by human compassion. Marcus stared at the images. This is all connected to that crash 15 years ago. One act of kindness created ripples across the galaxy, the Queen confirmed. But now those ripples have become a storm. The question is whether it will be a storm of liberation or destruction. She turned off the device and sat down again. I have come to ask for something unprecedented. For humanity to formally enter our civil war. Not as subjects or servants, but as equal partners. Marcus felt the weight of her words. What if we say no? Then Kethter will eventually win. He will enslave or destroy every species in his path, including yours. The Queen's voice became soft. But if you say yes, if humans help us, then together we might build something new. A galaxy where species work together instead of fighting. Marcus thought about his cargo routes, the alien traders he'd met, the gradual cooperation he'd seen growing over the years. All of it threatened by one alien's hatred. Why me? He asked. Why not talk to our government? Because governments think in terms of politics and military advantage. They will want to negotiate treaties and trade agreements. The Queen looked at him intently. But this war will not be won by politicians or generals. It will be won by individuals who care more about doing what's right than what's profitable. She reached across the table and placed one of her 4 hands near his. Silwyn asked me to find you specifically. She said the human who saved their life would understand what needs to be done. Marcus looked at the alien Queen's hand. The skin was crystal, but somehow it seemed warm. He thought about the young alien girl who had trusted him enough to let him help her. Now she was a queen, fighting for the same values of compassion and cooperation that had saved her life. What exactly are you asking me to do? Queen Veltara's compound eyes seemed to brighten. Come with me. Help me reach Silwyn and her resistance forces. Show her people and mine that humans and Zephyrians can work together. She paused. Help us end this war before it destroys everything we've built. Marcus closed his eyes and thought about his simple life as a cargo hauler. In a few hours, he could be fixing his navigation computer and planning his next routine run. Safe, predictable, boring. Or he could step into something bigger than himself. Something dangerous and uncertain, but maybe necessary. When he opened his eyes, Queen Veltara was waiting patiently. "All right," Marcus said. "Let's go save the galaxy." 2 hours later, Marcus stood on the bridge of a Zephyrian warship unlike anything he'd ever imagined. The Harmony's voice was enormous, its biometal hull stretching for miles. The bridge looked like the inside of a giant flower, with workstations arranged in organic curves around a central command area. Queen Veltara stood at the main display, watching as 3 other Zephyrian ships joined their formation. Each one carried survivors from the loyal fleet, refugees who had escaped Prince Kethter's purge. "This is all that remains," she told Marcus quietly. 4 ships out of a fleet that once numbered in the thousands. Marcus studied the tactical display. Red markers showed Kethter's forces spreading across the galaxy like a plague. They controlled the major industrial worlds, the primary military bases, and most of the Empire's communication networks. How did he do it so fast? Marcus asked. Admiral Zithram, the ship's commander, answered. He'd prepared for cycles before making his move. Loyal officers were transferred to remote posts or given accidents. Military supplies were redirected to bases under his control. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late. The Admiral was old for a Zephyrian, his crystal skin showing cracks and wear. He had served 3 generations of the royal family and clearly felt responsible for the current disaster. He also had help, Queen Veltara added grimly. The hegemony provided ships and weapons. Marcus knew about the hegemony, a collection of aggressive alien species that had been fighting humans for territory along the frontier. If they were back in Kethtar, this war could spread beyond Zephyrian space. Course laid in for the Thalmon system, the navigation officer reported. Estimated travel time, 6 standard days. Thalmon was where Queen Silwyn had established her resistance base, a fortress world on the edge of Empire space, far from Kethter's main forces. But getting there meant crossing enemy territory. "What's our plan if we run into hostile ships?" Marcus asked. Admiral Zithram's compound eyes focused on him. "We run. These ships carry important refugees, not weapons. We cannot afford to fight." Marcus nodded, but something bothered him about their route. He studied the navigation display more carefully. "Why are we going through the Nexus corridor?" "It's the most direct path, but also the most obvious." "Because it's the fastest," the Admiral replied. "Every day we delay gives Kethter more time to consolidate his power. But if I were setting a trap, that's exactly where I'd put it." Marcus traced alternative routes on the display. "What about going around through the dead zones?" The Admiral shook his head. "The stellar nurseries? Impossible. Radiation, gravitational anomalies, electromagnetic storms. No ship can navigate that region safely." Marcus looked at Queen Veltara. "On Zarian Prime, you said I succeeded because I tried things that seemed impossible." The Queen studied the star chart. "Explain your thinking." "Kethter expects you to take the direct route. He probably has ships waiting at every major checkpoint along the Nexus corridor." Marcus highlighted the dangerous region on the map. "But the dead zones are only dangerous if you try to navigate them like normal space." "What if we don't?" Admiral Zethram made a sound like grinding metal. "Human, do you understand the forces at work in stellar nurseries? Newborn stars creating magnetic fields that could tear our ships apart. Gravity wells that shift without warning. Radiation that would kill us all in minutes. I understand that those same forces would make it impossible for enemy ships to follow us," Marcus replied. "And I understand that sometimes you have to take risks to avoid bigger risks." Queen Veltara was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to her science officer. "Commander Nalsith, analyze the humans' proposed route. Could our ship survive passage through the dead zones?" Commander Nalsith was younger than the Admiral, with skin that showed fewer cracks. She worked in her station for several minutes, running calculations and simulations. Theoretically possible, she finally reported. Our biometal hulls could adapt to the radiation levels. The navigation computers could be modified to track gravitational changes. But the margin for error would be extremely small. Unacceptable risk, Admiral Zethram stated firmly. We have a duty to protect the refugees aboard these ships. Marcus turned to face the Admiral. What's the bigger risk? Trying something dangerous, or walking into a trap we know is waiting for us? Before the Admiral could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. The tactical display lit up with new contacts. Enemy ships dropping out of hyperspace, the sensor officer reported. 6 heavy cruisers bearing down on our position. Marcus looked at the display in shock. They found us already? Queen Veltara's expression darkened. Keth has spies everywhere. He probably knew about our departure before we cleared the station. The enemy ships were moving fast, trying to cut off the escape routes. Admiral Zethram started giving orders to his fleet, but Marcus could see they were trapped. How long before they intercept us? Marcus asked. 8 minutes, the tactical officer replied. Time to reach the dead zones? 12 minutes if we go to maximum speed. Marcus studied the display again. The enemy ships were positioned perfectly to block the normal escape routes. But they were also assuming the Zephyrian ships would behave predictably. What if we split up? Marcus suggested. Send 3 ships toward the Nexus corridor as decoys. They'll draw most of the enemy fleet away from us. Admiral Zethram made that grinding sound again. That would be sacrificing good people to save ourselves. Not if the decoy ships don't actually go into the Nexus corridor, Marcus explained. They lead the enemy away, then double back and follow us through the dead zones. Commander Nile Sith was already running calculations. It could work. The enemy ships would pursue what they think is the main force. By the time they realize it's a deception, we'd all be in the stellar nursery where they can't follow. Queen Veltara looked at the tactical display. The enemy ships were getting closer. Admiral, implement the humans' plan. Your Majesty, I must protest. Admiral. The Queen's voice carried absolute authority. How many times did conventional tactics work against my brother's forces? The old Admiral was silent. Then perhaps it's time to try something unconventional? She turned to Marcus. Explain to my captains exactly what you need them to do. The next few minutes were chaos. Marcus found himself coordinating with alien ship commanders, explaining tactics that seemed insane even to him. 3 ships would break away and lead the enemy on a chase, while the Harmony's voice headed straight for the most dangerous region of space they could find. The plan almost worked perfectly. The decoy ships drew away 4 of the 6 enemy cruisers, just as Marcus had predicted. But 2 ships remained, closing fast on the Harmony's voice. They're charging weapons, the tactical officer reported. Time to the dead zones? Queen Veltara asked. 3 minutes. The enemy ships opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space, barely missing the fleeing vessel. The next shots wouldn't miss. Marcus stared at the navigation display, thinking desperately. They needed more time, but there was nowhere to run. Then he saw it. A small gravity anomaly, probably left over from when this system's star was formed. It was close enough to reach, but using it would be extremely dangerous. Commander Nileseth, can you slingshot us around that gravity well? The science officer looked where he was pointing. That would accelerate us beyond safe speeds. The stress could tear the ship apart, but it would get us to the dead zones faster. Yes, but do it, Queen Veltar ordered. The Harmony's voice changed course toward the gravity well. The enemy ships followed, still firing. Their shots came closer and closer as the distance closed. Then the Zephyrian ship hit the gravity well's edge and rocketed forward like a bullet from a gun. The acceleration pressed Marcus into his seat with crushing force. Around him, alien crew members struggled to stay conscious. The enemy ships tried to follow but weren't prepared for the maneuver. One ship managed the turn but couldn't handle the acceleration. It spun out of control and had to break off pursuit. The other ship gave up the chase entirely. When they finally reached the dead zones, Marcus felt like he'd been through a food processor. But they were alive, and they were free. Admiral Zethram approached him as the ship entered the stellar nursery. "I owe you an apology, human. Your tactics saved us all." Marcus looked at the swirling clouds of gas and newborn stars around them. "The hard part's just starting. We still have to navigate through this without dying." Commander Nilesith was working furiously at her station, constantly adjusting their course as gravity fields shifted around them. The ship's biometal hull rippled and changed, adapting to radiation levels that would have killed a normal vessel. "How long to get through?" Marcus asked. 2 days, if we're lucky," she replied. "Longer if we hit unexpected anomalies." Queen Veltara joined them at the navigation station. "In 2 days, we'll reach Silwyn and find out if this resistance of hers can actually win a war." Marcus watched the beautiful destruction of the stellar nursery around them. Somewhere ahead waited an alien queen who might remember a human cargo hauler who had saved her life. Behind them, an empire tore itself apart while the galaxy watched and waited. "No pressure," Marcus muttered to himself. But as he watched the Zephyrian crew working together to navigate the impossible, he began to think they might actually have a chance. The fortress world of Thalman looked like something from a nightmare. Dark metal structures covered the planet's surface, connected by bridges that crossed deep canyons. Massive defense platforms floated in orbit, their weapons tracking the approaching ships. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Harmonies, voice as they requested permission to land. He could feel the tension among the crew. This was the moment that would determine everything. "Landing permission granted," came the reply. "Queen Silwyn is waiting in the command center." The ship settled onto a landing platform carved into the side of a mountain. As Marcus walked down the boarding ramp, he got his first close look at the resistance base. It was impressive, but also clearly desperate. Ships with battle damage filled the other landing platforms. Wounded Zephyrians moved carefully through the corridors. Queen Veltara led him through the base. The architecture was different from the ship, more angular and military. Everything was built for function, not beauty. "Silwyn has been preparing for this war longer than anyone realized," the Queen explained as they walked. When she saw what her uncle was planning, she began moving loyal forces and supplies here. They entered a massive command center carved directly into the mountain. Holographic displays showed the tactical situation across the galaxy. The red areas representing Kethter's forces had grown even larger since they'd left. Station Kepler-7. And standing at the central command station, directing the hopeless defense of a dying cause, was someone Marcus recognized immediately. Queen Silwyn had grown tall and elegant, her crystal skin showing the deep blue patterns of Zephyrian royalty. 4 arms moved with practiced efficiency as she coordinated with commanders across the galaxy. But when she turned to face the newcomers, her compound eyes held the same gentle intelligence Marcus remembered from that poisonous world. "Mother," Silwyn said, embracing Queen Veltara with all 4 arms. Then her gaze found Marcus. For a moment, she just stared. "Marcus Chun," she said finally. "The human who taught me that courage means helping others even when you're afraid." Marcus felt overwhelmed looking at her. The dying child he'd saved was now a queen, commanding fleets of starships. "You remembered." "I remember everything. Your voice when you told me I would live. Your hands when you shared your water with me. The way you covered me with your own blanket when the poison rain began." She approached him slowly. "I have spent 15 years trying to be worthy of the life you saved. Around the command center, other Zephyrians had stopped their work to watch. Marcus felt dozens of alien eyes studying him. "You became a queen," Marcus said. "I'd say you succeeded." Silwyn's expression became sad. "I became a queen watching my empire tear itself apart. My uncle has convinced millions of our people that aliens are inferior, that cooperation is weakness. Half our military follows him willingly." She gestured to the tactical displays. "We control perhaps 20% of Imperial space. Our fleets are outnumbered 10 to 1. Every day, more systems surrender to avoid destruction." Marcus studied the battle reports. The situation was even worse than Queen Veltara had indicated. Kether's forces were winning everywhere, crushing resistance with overwhelming firepower. "What's your current strategy?" Marcus asked. "Survival," Silwyn replied bluntly. "We hold our positions, evacuate civilians when possible, and hope something changes." "That's not a strategy. That's slow suicide." The command center went quiet. Several Zephyrian officers made angry sounds, but Silwyn held up a hand for silence. "You have a better idea?" she asked. Marcus looked at the displays again. Traditional military thinking said the resistance was doomed. But traditional thinking hadn't saved Silwyn's life on Zarian Prime. "You're fighting like you're the smaller version of his army," Marcus said. "But you're not. You're something completely different." Admiral Zethram had followed them into the command center. "Explain." Marcus pointed to the tactical display. "Kether controls the major worlds, the big fleets, the established power structures. He's fighting to maintain the old empire. But you're fighting for something new." Silwyn tilted her head, listening intently. "Stop trying to match his military strength. Instead, attack what he can't defend against." Marcus highlighted several systems on the display. "Information, ideas, hope. You want us to fight with words?" One of the officers asked skeptically. "I want you to fight with truth." Marcus turned to face the assembled commanders. "How many alien species are trapped in Kether's territory? How many are being enslaved or killed?" "Millions," Silwyn answered. "He's declared all non-Zephyrians to be inferior creatures." "Then let's tell them they have a choice." Marcus activated the communication controls. "Not just the aliens, but the Zephyrians too. Show them what you're building here." Over the next hour, Marcus outlined a plan that sounded impossible even to him. Instead of fighting fleet actions they couldn't win, the Resistance would launch an information war. They would broadcast messages to every system in the Empire, showing the cooperation between species in their territory. They would coordinate uprisings on occupied worlds. They would make it clear that this war wasn't about who controlled the Empire, but about what kind of galaxy they wanted to live in. "The logistics alone would be staggering," Admiral Zethram protested. "We don't have enough ships to coordinate that many operations." "Then we don't use ships," Marcus said. "We use the trade networks, the communication relays, the merchant guilds that connect the galaxy. Most of them are run by the same alien species that Kether is oppressing." Silwyn was studying the plan with growing excitement. A multi-species alliance. Not just military, but economic and political as well. Exactly. Kether has built his strategy around fighting other Zephyrians. He's not prepared for a galaxy-wide revolution. Commander Nileseth had been running calculations on her portable computer. "It could work," she said slowly. "If we can coordinate the timing, get enough species involved simultaneously, the Empire would face rebellions on thousands of worlds at once." Silwyn finished. "No military force could suppress that many uprisings." For the first time since arriving, Marcus saw hope in the alien faces around him. The next 3 weeks were the busiest of Marcus's life. He found himself coordinating with alien species he'd never heard of, explaining human concepts like grassroots organization and civil disobedience. The Zephyrians were used to hierarchical command structures, but this plan required independent groups, working toward common goals. The breakthrough came when they contacted the Traders Consortium, the galaxy-spanning organization of merchants and cargo. Haulers had been quietly fighting Kethter's new restrictions on alien trade. When they learned about the Resistance's plans, they offered to distribute information packages throughout their network. Every trade route, every cargo ship, every merchant station, the consortium representative explained through a secured channel. We reach places your military could never access. Marcus also worked with Silwyn on the propaganda broadcasts. They needed messages that would inspire hope without providing specific information that Kethter's forces could use. Tell them about that first day we met, Silwyn suggested as they recorded one of the broadcasts. Show them that cooperation between species isn't just possible, it's natural. The message they created was simple but powerful. It showed Marcus and Silwyn working together in the command center, human and alien united against tyranny. The contrast with Kethter's messages of species superiority was stark. On the day of the coordinated uprising, Marcus stood in the command center watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. The plan was working better than anyone had dared hope. On Vega Prime, human colonists and Zephyrian civilians had joined together to seize the planetary government. On Rigel Station, alien workers had shut down the shipyards that supplied Kethter's fleet. Throughout the Empire, species that had been oppressed for generations were rising up with new hope. But Kethter wasn't helpless. His remaining forces struck back with brutal efficiency, crushing some rebellions and making examples of the survivors. The war was far from over. The decisive moment came when Kethter himself arrived at Thulman with a massive fleet, intending to end the resistance once and for all. His ships surrounded the planet, cutting off all escape routes. He's going to destroy the entire world, Admiral Zethram reported. His fleet is charging planet-killer weapons. Marcus looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of enemy ships. There was no way the Resistance could fight them all. But maybe they didn't need to. Open a communication channel to Kethter's flagship, Marcus said. What are you doing? Silwyn asked. Something stupid, probably. Marcus activated the transmitter. Prince Kethter, this is Marcus Chun, the human who saved your niece's life. I want to make you an offer. The response came quickly, filled with anger and contempt. Human scum. You corrupted my niece with your weakness. When I destroy your pathetic resistance, I will hunt down every human in the galaxy. That's what I thought you'd say, Marcus replied calmly. But before you kill us all, don't you want to know how we coordinated rebellions on over 3,000 worlds simultaneously? There was a long pause. When Kethter spoke again, his voice was curious despite his anger. You will tell me this, or I will make your deaths very slow.